changes, corrections, additions?
I'll move that the October 18th minutes be approved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, Henry, we're interested in your photo chart here.
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
So the action item before you today is to approve a one-time contract with a firm, A&K Energy Conservation Incorporated, who will be tasked with constructing and installing a 250 kilowatt inductive wireless charging station that will be installed at what we refer to internally as our lay-by site, which is the transfer location that's located on our campus. You can see that the site plan goes over the specifics of the location. So, brief history and a recap of this project. So as everyone knows, we have 2 all-electric buses in service. They've been doing well. We have placed another order for 4, utilizing low-no awards. Those have a delivery date scheduled for the fall of 2020. So we look forward to those arriving. Now, to allow for extended time in operation, that is the purpose of what this charging station is at our transfer site, and really is to extend the range of the buses. Typically, right now, the buses have a range of approximately 180 miles or can stay in service for about 15 hours. So this should allow the buses to stay in service all day. Theoretically, it could be indefinitely, all things being equal. Now, back in 2016, the Pinellas County Board of Commissioners vetted projects and approved projects. This one being one of those many projects that were approved, which was to utilize British Petroleum settlement monies from the Deepwater Horizon accident. We commonly refer to it as BP oil spill money. And PSTA and the county entered into an interlocal agreement in which $589,000 would be appropriated for purchase of the charging equipment, installation costs, construction costs, and also any type of architectural and engineering and design costs. So since that agreement was signed, PSTA staff acquired the charging equipment. It is here, it's on site, in storage until ready to be installed. We have done design and engineering. We have a meeting with the county building department on December 5th to go through a pre-application meeting for the building permit. And part of that process, we have completed the construction and site. I'd like to turn it over to Director Al Burns of Procurement to go over the solicitation.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Al Burns, Director of Procurement.
You're way down at the end of the wall.
I was getting ready to move. In August of this year, we posted a procurement on the PSTA's website, the Manstar, and we started posting on FDOT's websites as well. On Friday, on the 6th and the 13th of September, we held two pre-bid meetings to let people come in and learn about the project and walk the site. We received 2 responsive bids on the 25th of September, one from A&K Energy Conservation, Inc., and Bandy's Construction Company. A&K Conservation is determined to be the parent low bidder, and you see the bid table there where the pricing is. I would like to add that A&K is a small Florida-owned business, so I'm pretty excited about that. In seeing that they were a small-owned business, we did a responsibility check, as we always do on all the businesses we intend to enter into a contract with, and they're in good standing. As Henry said, the fiscal impact is to be funded by Pinellas County BP settlement monies, and the recommendation is recommend approval of a contract with A&K Energy Conservation, Inc. for the construction and installation of an electric bus charging station for a total cost not to exceed $192,000.
Answer any questions?
Okay, any questions?
Henry, how long will the construction take?
So we've defined it a total timeline of 8 weeks. However, as you see in the site plan, we will be creating a temporary transfer site inside our parking lot. In order to do that work, we're estimating approximately 2 weeks that we would be operating out of this temporary site, and then we will reopen the actual transfer site and continue construction for the duration.
And then what's our target date?
We are looking, if all goes well with obtaining permits, we are looking to break ground February of 2020. So we should be final completion approximately April. Probably 6 weeks for actual construction, then we'll allow for 2 weeks of commissioning and testing of the equipment.
Henry, what would we have to do to this site if we had 20 electric buses?
Well, if we had 20 electric buses all coming through this particular location, we would probably look at installing another 3. Multiple buses pass through there, and the equipment is able to be used continuously, so it doesn't need to rest or anything. So in order to support 20, I would say approximately another 3, which the site can support.
So if the buses are not in use, they could be lined up continuously and be charged continuously.
Yes.
Mr. Schulman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple questions. Given the amount of time that the buses are normally at this location, what kind of charge can we expect them to receive in a normal operating?
So we've done some math internally. So we have 80 kilowatt plug-in chargers here, and typically the buses come back from service with approximately 40% stated charge, so we charge approximately 60%. That process takes about 2.5 to 3 hours to go from 40% to 100% at an 80 kilowatt charger. Since this will be a 250 kilowatt charger, we're looking to recapture approximately 2 to 5% on an average 3 to 5 minute charge duration, which is about right for a layover on our particular routes. The goal, since we use a term called opportunity charging, the goal is to recharge whatever is consumed on a typical round trip the bus makes on its route. So if it consumes 2%, we would return 2% each trip. That way the bus does not go into what we call a charge deficit, where slowly and incrementally throughout the day, your state of charge on the bus keeps dropping until it has to come back to the depot and recharge completely. So that is the goal. Return what we use each round trip.
Couple of questions. Did the agreement with Pinellas County, was that just for the chargers, or did it mention specific locations as well?
The interlocal mentioned St. Petersburg as general location. The interlocal itself was for the purchase of the charging equipment, plus the A&E, plus the installation.
Okay, so does anything need to be done with the interlocal agreement based on the change plan? Okay. And the 589 is what was authorized. Is that higher than it was originally expected? Or I guess you were at 192. I seem to remember, were we looking at originally installing 2 chargers for 200,000 each, or am I
Just one.
Just okay. Okay, thank you.
I have one question. Al, this is for you. Has AK Energy, have they ever installed this type of equipment at any other location do you know of?
Let me take that.
Well, I would say that PSTA, we're the first to be started installing inductive charging here at our facility. A&K has done the electric chargers for cars and vehicles, pedestrian-owned vehicles, and I'd like to add that they are a partner with Duke Energy, and they do perform work with Duke Energy as well.
Perfect.
I'll add a little bit to that. So A&K will be handling the site preparation, so concrete cutting, any trenching or setting of concrete pads and conduit stub-ups. The actual manufacturer of the equipment, Wave, will be here during construction to make the final placements, the final tie-ins, final connections, and of course, commissioning the equipment for us.
Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, sorry, I missed the first part of the presentation, so this equipment is going to be on site here. And this is the equipment that we've been talking about, having it at a central location for any of the buses that we might have, electric buses. And this really has nothing to do with the infrastructure that we need to provide a lot more electric buses. This really is just a component. If we are able to, and could you just speak to that for a minute, please? How we're restricted a little bit by the number of buses that we can buy now because of the infrastructure issue, and then how this relates to that.
So this charger, as I mentioned before, we use the term en route charging or opportunity charging. So this charger will support buses that have left the maintenance facility, and will keep them in service and extend their range while they're in service, so they don't have to come back here. Looking ahead, and this is something that my department, along with a couple others, are studying with Duke Energy, along with what constraints and capacities we have here at our facility, is what does the future look like for 8 buses, 10, 12. So it will be a lot larger of a charging operation here within the facility, especially during overnight hours. We know that. That's why we've embarked on a pretty in-depth review of what our current capacities are today, what will we need for the future to support any additional number of buses, but also involving the utility, Duke, to see what they have upstream for capacities constraints today versus 10 years from now. So the end product will be what we're calling a 10-year feasibility study to support PSTA's charging operations.
So back to this charging operation, most of these buses will be charged. Do we have the charging in-house? Not en route charging, but do we have the charging availability now to charge these buses overnight?
Yes.
But these stations allow us to keep it fully charged during the day. If we didn't have these stations, would we still be able to get it done? Would these buses still be able to do their routes for a day's travel? Or is this redundant?
No, it's not redundant. So I think I mentioned before you arrived. Right now, our electric buses have a range of 180 miles on a state of charge, or approximately 15 hours. So without a charging system in the field en route, then slowly the range and the state of charge would decline enough where the bus would need to be taken off route, brought back here to the depot, where we do have 2 plug-in chargers. And then they would have to recharge as a process that takes approximately 2.5 to 3 hours. This allows the buses to stay in service. It extends the range, or basically allows that a deficit in the state of charge does not occur. So that's where the theoretical is, that they could stay in service indefinitely, because they do have a place to stop off, top off the charge, and just keep going.
But with the buses we have now, and the routes that we use them on now, wouldn't be necessary today.
Right now we're operating 2 buses on the Looper in St. Pete, and the way we operate that is 1 in the morning, and we bring it back here to slow charge back up, and then 1 in the afternoon.
Okay, so you just said something. So if we do it in-house, it's slow charge. If we do it en route, it's fast charge. And the en route's right out front here.
Yes. Okay. But we have 4 more on order, and
4 more electric buses.
4 more electric buses on order. We have the ability and the chargers to slow charge those overnight as well here. Beyond those 6, though, that's what Henry's analysis is trying to look at, see what additional infrastructure we need over on that side, in the garage, overnight. This thing will, you could argue, allow us to, run the buses longer without buying more, or, recycling them out. So, putting it here also then allows us to add it to a number of, allow the electric buses to operate on all of those routes.
The 10-year plan that you were talking about, do you anticipate being able to add more electric buses before that 10-year plan, so that this charging station would be even more necessary? Or are you limited right now to 6 until that plan is done 10 years from now?
Our plan is broken up into both the logical timeline, which is the 0 to 3-year plan, and then we look at the theoretical timeline. So as we apply for more loan awards, and if we're successful at these, we'll look at the outcome of the BWS. And so that's incorporated into the timeline as what the short-term needs are versus what the theoretical.
But those short-term purchases that you're talking about, the system we have now will be able to take care of up to how many more buses? Or is the 6 that we bought it until we have the infrastructure enhancements that are long-term that you're talking about?
Well, again, what is on the action item today, or the recommendation, would be just for the in-route charger. So, I mean, theoretically, it can service unlimited, or it only works for 10 minutes per bus. So, as many buses as you can feed through there, it can handle en route. I think there is a question that Henry's study, and we're talking to Duke Power about how many electric buses can we, we do have the charging equipment, the overnight charging equipment, so that theoretically we can handle more than 6, but we might have to space some of those out. They might flow into the peak period of the morning, so we're just trying to look at all that.
But the in-route charging stations provide a lot more flexibility to the 2 and now 6 buses, or soon to be 6 buses.
Yeah. I guess theoretically, if we were just overflowing with electric buses and we couldn't charge them all overnight, and one left the garage at 80%, you could swing by there and get another 10% and go on your way or something. But
Okay. Any other questions? I have, okay, go ahead.
And it's somewhat separate from this, but we've had the electric bus running now for a year, right? A little over a year. It would be helpful, just as part of our education, to get an idea of how those are performing. You talked a little bit about the charges that come back and how they're running, but through different seasons. So just so as we're looking at the bus fleet going forward, now that we have a year of our own data, it'd be interesting to see how they're performing.
Okay, a couple of quick questions, but the primary one is, as we get more electric buses, do we have the capacity to negotiate our rates with Duke?
That's one of the things that the study is looking at, which is any type of tariffs, and Duke's regulated as it is. So to support this soon-to-be 6 buses, all right, our rates are not really going to change. Okay, we pay a blended rate, which is a combination of both the peak and the non-peak periods, of about 8.90 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's pretty typical. We do not envision that rate would change, even with the addition of 4 more buses. Where the interesting, what we're looking at is if there was 10 or 22 or 30 buses here, where does that put PSTA in terms of a rate class for that type of, one, the capacity of power that we'll need to feed the campus, and then 2, the consumption of electricity. So we've been actively speaking with Duke Energy on that, and that's also going to be a part of this feasibility study.
Okay. And longer term, just to continue on with the theme that Commissioner Eggers was talking about, if we need to go to a second overnight charging unit, or a third or a fourth, do we have any anticipation of special grants or other sources of funding for those types of things? Because that ran, what, about $500,000-600,000 to put that unit in?
Yeah, so the two grant sources that we're vying for in the future are federal funds. Federal funds for the Low-No grants that we've already received 2 grants from that source. Congress seems to be increasing the amount of money that they're putting into that pot. And then second would be which is a one-time potential right now, which is the Volkswagen settlement funds for that the state of Florida is going to be allocating over the next 3 to 6 months. So we've put in applications for that as well. We'll have to see.
Okay. All right, and the extra 20, you already asked this question, but extra $26,000 over and above the bid price from A&K is going to be adequate for any overruns or other things like that we have unanticipated issues that we may run into?
Exactly, yes, sir.
All right.
Just one final question.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, just, and I may vote one way today and then ask you more questions between now and the board meeting. I just want to make sure I understand the difference between want and need right now for these charging stations. So, and without wanting to take too much of the board's time today, that's what I'd like to know before our board meeting. Just if we can get by without doing this now, fine, for the next number of years, or is it a problem when we buy the next 2 or 3 buses, or is it a problem 10 years from now? But just make, and I don't, again, you've probably gone into all this, but I don't want to keep us from doing it. That's what I'd like to understand a little bit more before the next one.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Do we hear a motion?
I'll move to approve. I'll approve the electric busing stations right now.
Okay. So if it moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Yay. Okay. Thank you very much, Henry. Okay. Let's go to the Fair Media contract modification. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Board members. My name is Bressa Zanko, and I'm the Manager of Revenue and Capital Project Accounting here at PSTA. Today, we are bringing you an action item to modify the contract for the Ready Credit Corporation. We would like to add $167,025. Again, these costs are to be shared amongst the Flamenco Regional Working Group to a not-to-exceed amount of $640,025. This contract is related to our Flamenco project, which we are extremely happy to report that we are moving forward full speed to a 2020 implementation. As a reminder, the Flamenco Fairs project is a regional project with 5 participating agencies called Regional Working Group, where 1 smart card media will be used regionally. The Flamenco project is led by HEART. However, in order to assist the region, PSTA and our Director of Procurement, Al Burns, has led the efforts for the procurement portion for the Flamenco Fair Media and Retail Network Services. In October of 2018, the Board of Directors approved the contract for the Ready Credit Corporation in an amount not to exceed $473,000. These costs were to be shared amongst the regional working group. Through this contract, Ready Credit was to provide all smart card media to be sold at the participating retail network locations and packaged nicely like this. We're gonna do a little show and tell, and if you don't mind, Al, if you could pass these. In September of 2018, Board approved a contract with Electronic Data Magnetics to provide fair media, which included magnetic stripe tickets that we currently use, and extended use cards, plus the limited use cards, which is the paper option of the smart card. But after further discussions with the regional working group and the consultant hired by HART to assist manage the Flamingo project, it has been decided that there are significant risks involved when using extended use cards manufactured by multiple vendors. Due to these risks, the regional working group is recommending that all of the extended use cards be supplied by Ready Credit Corporation instead of Electronic Data Magnetics. But after this modification, we will still continue to purchase magnetic stripe tickets from Electronic Data Magnetics and limited use cards for our terminals. So basically, this is funded by operating funds, and I did mention the PSTA's fiscal impact is $65,500. But if we purchase the cards from Ready Credit Corporation, we won't be purchasing them from Electronic Data Magnetics. Therefore, the overall fiscal impact for the entire region is only $5,400. So the cost to the region is minimal to avoid a lot of risks for this complicated project. Therefore, our staff recommends approval to add the extended use cards with Ready Credit Corporation contract for an added value of $167,025, costs to be shared amongst the regional working group, to a not to exceed amount of $640,025 over a 5-year period.
Okay. I think we'll have some questions on this one. Go ahead, Commissioner Schulman.
So in essence, what I hear you saying is that we're not going to be spending $161,000 with EDS, and instead we're shifting that to Ready Credit. And the net cost for us is a $5,400 increase, which buys us greater security in the use of those cards.
Exactly.
Okay. That's my question. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, let me make sure that I understand. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner.
I'll follow you.
Let me make sure I understand. Are we talking about the paper cards or the cards, the samples that you handed us out a few months ago?
So the contract modification is for the extended use cards for the plastic smart card.
Right? Okay. All right. And again, with regard to this particular contract, everybody else is on board? All the other players are on board as well?
Yes, and,
Okay.
and
Because one of the features of this is that we have universal acceptance throughout the whole system, or series of systems.
yes,
Okay.
and I'm here to represent the region because PSTA is leading the procurement for retail.
Commissioner Eggers, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. The original contract was $473. The new contract will be for $167,000 more.
Correct.
PSTA's part will be $65,000 more.
That's correct.
So what missed the $5,400 more. What is
Yes.
that?
That's a really great question. So basically, when EDM, or Electronic Data Magnetics, came back with the price responses, basically some of the agencies are paying more, but the smaller, or I should say, the larger agencies, HART and PSTA, because they're buying larger quantity of tickets, they're getting better deal with EDM. And smaller agencies like SCAT, PCPT, and the bus, they got higher price. So it's between, the price difference between the agency is net of $5,400.
So the reason it says $65,000 is the increase to the contract that PSDA will share with the other counties for the increased price of the Ready Credit Corporation. But as Commissioner Schulman just said, we're switching out. The board already approved, we already had a budget to buy these plastic cards from this other company, Electronic Data Systems.
For how much was that?
Well, it was a combo contract, so some of the papers, these, I think, are still gonna be bought by them, but there will be a deduct in that, so the net price, because we'll spend less with Electronic Data Systems and more with Ready Credit, the net is $5,400 to PSDA.
So why are we, so I don't understand why we're calling this a fiscal impact of $65,000. It seems like that's what we're approving. When you're saying the net impact is really only $5,400.
Well, officially, the contract for all of these cards for the whole region is under PSTA. The PSTA will sign the contract for $640,000, and then we're going to be sending invoices to the other counties to get. They're going to buy off this contract and pay us. So the board authorization has to be for the. It's on behalf of the whole region.
Does that include?
But the whole region's $167,000.
Right. $167,000 increase to the contract is split like
Understand?
that.
So again, can you please help me?
Oh, I think you bring up a good point. I think we can clarify in the write-up that we're going to be spending $65,500 more with Ready Credit and $61,000 less with EDM.
Thank you. So the
Okay.
net effect would be.
$5,400, whatever the numbers are.
And then just one quick comment about what is this risk that we're talking about? I don't understand the risk. What's the risk?
Yes, these are really good questions. We questioned that too before we decided to go to contract modification. And basically, the consultants hired by HART gave us a list of risks, and I can read them here. Incorrect encoding on the card's barcode or the max track, incorrect encoding on the packaging barcode, quality control issues when implementing a change in the card or packaging specs and change doesn't get implemented consistently across vendors, quality assurance issues with testing during initial card order or subsequent card orders. Testing efforts are doubled with 2 manufacturers, and it's possible that shortcuts will be taken to minimize testing efforts. And then project delays. 2 vendors means the retail network must double testing efforts on an already complex and lengthy project.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Cox.
Thank you. I have a question about the paper. Now, on the BRT, we're gonna have like a pedestal with the tap and go to get on that?
Yes.
So will these function on
No. Ultimately, no.
that? Okay, so they have to have, a rider would have to have the Flamingo card to utilize the BRT, is that correct? There's no cash taken,
Correct.
Or the app.
right? Sorry?
I think you also use.
They
the app
can
as
use
well.
the app.
Okay, the app, yeah.
We'll have paper Flamingo cards, like one-use paper. Basically, those are gonna go away, and there's gonna be, everything's
Oh,
gonna
okay. So there will be an alternative for not having to use this.
Right.
I'm good.
Right, Commissioner Schulman.
Speaking about the risks, this recommendation was made by a separate consultant that was hired to manage this entire project, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so it wasn't, Ready Credit Corporation saying, hey, these are some risks we've identified.
No, this is an independent consultant that was hired by HART.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner? Let me ask you a question on this. How are we doing with the use of this card so far? And what's how hard is it to create a false card like this? So that, I don't know if anybody's going to bother to do this, to ride the bus once, but if there is somebody that's riding the bus all the time, that might become worthwhile, and we could have fake cards like this out there somewhere. Is that the purpose of using one vendor?
Well, again, when we go to, that card has a chip in it.
Right.
I have no idea how hard it is to counterfeit those, but I would
Right, we haven't
seriously
had any
doubt
problems
for
so far, is really what I'm
$2
asking.
sense that people would do that, but it'll make it more secure than the current mag stripe
Right.
system
Right.
we have.
Okay.
As far as how's it going, we have steady use of it. Unfortunately, right now, because of the project and the technical implementation of the project, it's been shut down for 6 months or so as they mess around with the software. Or as a bus rider myself, it doesn't work. It has not worked for a while now, and it keeps saying coming soon. So we're hopeful that this will be coming soon.
Right, but we're.
But right now, so people do have the Flamingo cards. The board report data shows about 5,000 rides a month in Pinellas County of people just showing their app on their phone or their Flamingo card to the operator, and they press a button.
Right.
But that's going to go away hopefully very shortly, and then the tap cards, it'll be able to tap.
Will we be able to get additional data from this card when it's implemented, so we know which stops are important, and in fact, where the people that are using the cards are from, because we're going to need a name and address and that kind of thing on this, right? Or do we get any data at all from people, or we just take their money?
Unlimited data.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we want to know where you're from, everybody's from.
Yeah, just for planning purposes and nothing else. We have alternative sources we're getting that same data from now. We know which stops are the most important and so on, but there's a potential to gather more precise data with this in the future.
Yes, it's very sophisticated system, and this is account-based system, so we will have data for our riders, we will have data for our routes, for our bus stops. It will be very different from what we have today. So we are very excited, and we cannot wait.
Okay. You have no questions?
One more question. And will we have a kiosk to deliver these? Is that how we're gonna do it, or where will they be purchased that we've got too far?
Yes, we have, they will of course be available at all of our transportation centers, here at PSTA, Grand Central, Williams Park, etc. They'll be available at retail outlets like CVS's, Walgreens, 7-Elevens. I don't know. Wherever they have those racks of cards. So you can buy your Applebee's and your way to get to Applebee's right there. And then, of course, on your phone. Hopefully all of you have downloaded the Flamingo Fairs Tampa Bay app already. You can buy everything on there. Just use your phone. When this thing goes live in the springtime, the new thing that's coming across, you'll be able to just use you don't even have to buy a Flamingo card. If you have a proximity Visa or MasterCard, or if you have one on your phone, like Apple or Google Wallet or whatever, you can just tap that. We'll take Visa, basically, on the buses, starting when this thing goes live.
Thank you.
Seems like it's taken an awfully long time to get this thing up and running. We've been talking about this for quite a while now.
Consultant says we're faster
Yeah.
in most other cities, but I don't know.
Talking about the usage of the app and the Flamingo card made me think of another question we were talking about earlier, which was multiple users. So a family gets on a bus. So if I have it on my phone, I can't do 3 people, or So we, each of us have to have it on our phone, or my 8-year-old has to have a separate card, right? We're not.
We have a solution for that too.
Fantastic.
So we have a family pass that we're working, our planning department is working on the draft for our fare structure, and that will solve the family problem.
Gotcha.
I am so incredibly pleased to hear that. Not only that it's being solved, but that you got me. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
So we're going to approve this, subject to the other organizations agreeing to this. They haven't voted on this yet.
That's correct.
Okay.
PSTA is representing the regional working group, and therefore we are asking for approval.
Well, did the other organizations have to vote and approve it also?
No, because PSTA has led the procurement of this, and we are.
So they will be paying their fair share.
The head of our regional working group is Hart, and they have vetted this with the other participants in the program, and they have approved it. Like Spressa said, we are the contracting mechanism. So any changes to the contract have to come through us.
Have to come through us, but we're going to get reimbursed by the others.
Yes.
That's not a
That's what I
question.
think the big question is, if we're laying out the money, the other guys are going to play along.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, with that, any other questions? I think we're okay. All right. Do we have a motion?
I'll move that we modify the credit contract.
Okay. All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
George said it first.
Okay, let's go to the Mobility on Demand program. Bonnie?
Thanks. Okay, good morning. So my name is Bonnie Epstein. I'm a senior planner here at PSTA, and I'm overseeing the implementation of PSTA's innovative programs. So today, this is an action item for you to recommend to the full board to amend the contracts with all of our Mobility on Demand program service providers that include Lyft, United Taxi, Wheelchair Transport, Care Ride, and a few others, at a total cost for all the providers not to exceed $525,000. So before we get to the details about the contract amendments, I'd like to take a step back and talk about what our very successful Mobility on Demand, or MOD program, is all about. Chairman Barkley, you might remember this because you're in the 2016 photo ribbon cutting when Congressman David Jolly announced that PSTA was selected by the Federal Transit Administration to be one of only 11 transit systems selected for the Innovative Sandbox Grant Program. So our project is to see if we can provide on-demand service to paratransit customers using TNCs and other providers. Because at the time, the only paratransit option we had for customers was with Care Ride, and you had to schedule the ride the day before. So today we can see that the program has been an incredible success, and some of you may have already seen this video, but I have this short video that really explains why we're so excited about the Mobility on Demand, or MOD, program. Sorry.
The data shows that we're seeing great increases. Our 10,000 rider on this new program, really, really popular. The notoriety we've got to be intimidating, we've seen great.
Sorry. If I had known there was a video.
To serve our country and
Okay,
it's a
we
great
can start over.
opportunity getting better transportation. We're celebrating the 10,000th ride of what PSTA has implemented, our Mobility on Demand program. The data shows that we're seeing great increases. This is our 10,000th rider on this new program. It's really, really popular. The notoriety we've gotten to be an innovative agency is great, but what's really gratifying to me is when you see a veteran who served our country and is such a great member of our community getting better transportation options. That's what makes these things all worth it.
Well, before the program started, you have to schedule things a week or 2 weeks in advance. And they give you time to, well, okay, if you wanted to be there, say at 5 o'clock, you have to schedule around 4 o'clock to be picked up. And they had a half-an-hour window before they could get there.
Before we launched this program, some 95% of all of the rides were just to and from medical appointments. Because those are the kinds of appointments that you can make a reservation in advance. But now we know people are taking to lunch, or they're going to the movies on Paratransit. So this really has just expanded the betterment of people's lives. To have fun instead of just doing what they have to do. So it's really great.
Well, matter of fact, just this last Friday, a friend of mine called me up, and he was totally blind. He lives up in Crystal River. He said, "Hey, let's go to Fairway Pizza and get something to eat." And I said, "Sure." So I called the number, and they said, "Well, we'll have somebody there within a couple minutes." Well, within 2 minutes before I could actually get out of the house and lock the door, they were there.
I am visually impaired, legally blind, and I have 2 children, and I'm a single mother, single working mother. I'm very grateful to this program simply because it's given me a sense of independence, and it's given me opportunities to do more than I ever was able to do before. This program has made it where those unexpected things, there's now a solution to being able to get things done.
So PSTA has a number of partnerships. We were the first in the nation to have a partnership with the TNC Uber, and now we have 3 different programs. We're really, really proud of the innovation we're able to provide to Pinellas County.
So as Brad mentioned in that video, that we provided over 10,000 rides on our Mobility on Demand program. So actually, as of today, we've provided over 17,000 on-demand rides through our MOD program. So to date, we've been paying for the program using our FTA Sandbox grant funding. So we now can project that the grant funds are going to be used up within the next couple months. So we've started developing a comprehensive RFP for service providers, and we're going to issue that RFP shortly, and that'll come to the PSTA board for approval in March or April of next year. And we anticipate that most, if not all, of our current service providers, like Lyft, United Taxi, and Wheelchair Transport, will submit proposals, and that we can establish 5-year contracts that will really make this program more permanent. So in the interim period of this next 3 to 4 months, we need to amend existing service provider contracts to bridge us so that so we can have until we have completed the procurement process. And as this slide shows under the bridge, PSTA is using FDOT grant funding of $250,000 for this program. So while we use that grant funding plus the approved DART budget funding, that total $525,000 to keep this successful program going while we complete the RFP process. So again, the action item for this morning is to recommend approval for contract modifications to our MOD service provider contracts, including Lyft, United Taxi, Wheelchair Transport, CareRide, Go and Software, Liberty Wheelchair, and we're also adding a new provider, VCare Medical, at a total cost not to exceed $525,000. Any questions?
Questions? Commissioner Ayers?
Yeah, just again, trying to follow all the numbers. So in the current budget that we have now, we have 600 and, how much money do we have in the current budget, our own budget, for this program?
Well, it's all part of the DART budget, which is, I think it's over $8 million. So the money that we spend on here, while we have grant funding, of course, reduces our costs substantially. And even if we don't have any grant funding going forward, the cost will be a lot less, so we should see a decrease because the cost provided And these services is less than we normally would pay.
Yeah, about 45-50% less.
I think the
cost per
program's
trip.
been great. I'm just trying to make sure I understand the budget effect to PSTA.
So it should be a positive budget effect
In this current budget
in this current budget and going forward.
and going forward. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Cox?
Yeah, hi, Bonnie, I was looking at the providers. And we're, first four we know well. But a new provider, V-Care Medical, do you have any information on them? Because I tried to find them online and they're,
Yeah, they're definitely pretty new. They have 2 vehicles, a couple drivers. I have a lot of documents if you'd like to look at them. They're certified with the county. They do drug and alcohol testing. If you'd like to see all the documents,
no,
don't worry.
I
I've
just
got 'em.
wanted to know, I couldn't find anything on
Yeah, they're definitely
online.
pretty
And then
new.
the address was a UPS mailbox, their business
Mm-hmm.
address. So as long as you have the documents and you're certified by the county and the drivers are vetted and drug tested.
Yes.
Any other? Let me ask a couple of questions. First of all, are we setting the price and they have to use our price, or are all these vendors charging us different amounts?
So for some of the providers, we're using a contracted rate, and some of them, it's just the market or metered fare for the trip.
So how are we going to keep track of all these guys if they're charging us different amounts? And are we, if there are different amounts, are we using the vendor that has the lowest asking price for the rides?
So right now, our average rate on the service providers that are using metered fare or market rates, we definitely keep track of it. The cost per trip is always lower than our contracted care ride ambulatory rate. So the rates every month have been substantially lower. Like I mentioned a minute ago, about 50% lower.
Okay, and what's the reason for that? Is it competition, or do we pick a high number to start with?
So the rates using service providers like Lyft and United Taxi, we traditionally see a lower cost per trip. They don't go through some of the same things as the care ride providers, so we're able to have the lower cost per trip.
And that's what Commissioner Eggers was, I think, just getting to when asking about the budget. So we have a contract with set rates in the contract with Care Ride, which provides still the vast majority of our trips on our paratransit program. But every time someone chooses to ride a United Taxi or a Lyft ride, it is lower cost to PSTA is still paying everything but the $4.50 fare.
Right.
It's lower cost to PSTA, and we save money because they didn't ride Care Ride. They rode this instead.
Right.
Now, to the extent that there are new trips that they weren't taking on Care Ride, that's additional cost for us. So we're tracking all that. The way this program has been set up from the beginning is we established our partners in the grant with FTA, and then we've basically been desperately looking for more wheelchair accessible vehicles out there. We, Lyft and taxi, we have the cars, the sedans, which can handle the vast majority of our riders can go in a sedan, but for wheelchair customers, in order to provide them comparable real-time service, we need more and more wheelchair accessible vehicles available. So that's why Bonnie has been beating the bushes and found this
V-Care?
the
V-Care Medical.
the V-Care Medical and others, which was 1 or 2 wheelchair accessible vehicles to try to get more and more of those out there. But we're going to solve all that craziness with all these different contracts with this one RFP moving forward.
Okay. Commissioner?
Yeah, so the comment about it being a positive effect is certainly the case. At least we think so. We're going to, as you say, we're going to monitor.
Right.
Perhaps this service is now going to open up more uses that might otherwise not have been taken.
Right.
Under the other system. So but we are going to monitor to see how that program continues to grow and cost us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we're without that box, so.
I'd like to make a little note in addition from what I've learned from working with Bonnie, is that we also, part of what Bonnie does and the way this has been achieved, the goal of obtaining the least costly ride, is through an application. And many of these providers that Bonnie has mentioned today are tracked through an application. So at the time of the booking or the brokering of the ride, the person looking for the ride can find the closest vehicle. That's what allows for the savings amongst the vendors, is that you're able to find a vehicle in the area rather than maintaining a vehicle at a site to ship out, so it's on demand. That being said, the purpose of the RFP is to start to develop some of the standards for the reporting and, more importantly, the tracking of the rides, and to get consistency across the vendors so that we can monitor accurately and determine and evaluate their trip costs and get a lot of trip reporting.
Thank you. All right, everybody happy with this?
So essentially, one other question.
All right,
sorry.
go ahead. One more.
Nope. Oh, so essentially, this original pilot program has continued to expand in how we can use, or what folks can use the service for. Yes, I mean, it originally was more of that first mile, last mile, or has this always been a separate?
So this is not the Direct Connect program. Mobility on Demand is open to anyone that's in our ADA or DART program. Anyone can join, and they can take trips anywhere in the county for $4.50, the same copay they have on Care Ride. And so what we saw at the beginning is people were testing it out, taking trips similar to like what they took on Care Ride, mostly medical appointments, grocery. And now that people realize they can take on-demand trips whenever they want and trust the service, they're doing like the Eugene Backey said in the video, going out to dinner, going to see movies, and doing lots of, Brad calls, lots of fun trips. So it's given people, like the mobility has increased a lot for the riders.
But that's right. I mean, we see great potential in this. Prior to launching this program earlier this year, the DART, the Care Ride rides, when we didn't have this, were going up and up and up. We were seeing a record high ridership on Care Ride and paying that contracted rate. So when over the last year, and we're in the midst of it right now, is trying to come up with a sustainable program for the future for paratransit. First of all, Care Ride was asking us to do this too because they only have X number of vehicles, and they weren't even able to provide all of the rides. So this program has provided some relief there. I think you've seen in the ridership report that overall ridership on traditional Care Ride is down, but this ridership is way up. So maybe there is a switch. But we see taking this from a pilot program because it's successful in making it permanent. Bonnie's right now working on with our consultants who are actually in town right now to kind of reorient our whole paratransit program. That this would be a layer on top of traditional Care Ride paratransit, also using the first mile, last mile. It's a different program, but some people could maybe ride the bus. The bus is still far cheaper than any of these options, so they can ride the bus. We'd rather have them ride the bus. Maybe a first mile, last mile Uber ride to the bus they can do, because they maybe can't walk very far. Maybe that's an option. All these different options, and really more of a customer-oriented educational process rather than a the traditional sort of like you're in or you're out determination. That's what we're kind of moving toward. Where this would be a permanent part of what DART is.
And as far as trip count, are these counting on our overall trip count? Or is that still a work in progress?
It's a work in progress.
Some of them are
some of them
counted. We're
aren't.
working on getting all of them counted, but definitely counting some of them.
Okay, Do I hear a motion?
I'll move that we approve the MOD service provider contract.
Okay.
Second?
Commissioner Soraki, seconded. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously, thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thanks.
Great ideas here. That's super. Okay, information technology. Okay, let's find out what we're doing here.
Good morning. Julie Cagliostro, Director of Information Technology. Today I'm here to ask you to approve a action
up,
item
Julie.
for multiple IT, sorry about that, maintenance agreements and subscriptions for a good portion of our core business systems. And page 3 contains a list of the providers, the contract terms, and the total dollar values overall. You can take a look at that, and Al will discuss that shortly. I'd just like to discuss each provider and introduce them and tell you about the importance of their solution to PSTA. First is Avails Technologies FleetNet software, which is specifically designed for transit agencies, and it's vital to manage and track timekeeping, procurement, contracts, fleet operations, and more. It interfaces with Genfair, Clever Devices, and HASIS for the purpose of collecting vital information for schedule, fleet, and revenue. And this information is used as a basis in our performance indicator reporting. Next is Clever Devices. Clever's Intelligent Transportation System is a complex hardware and software solution that basically comprises the backbone of our management of the agency's fleet operations. And the Clever process begins with the uploading of information regarding scheduling and route information from HASTIS. The information is uploaded to the logic units on the vehicles, and it's also loaded to the Transit Management Center here on the campus. The Transit Management Center uses it for computer-aided dispatching and vehicle monitoring and tracking. Meanwhile, on board the vehicle, the data is continuously compiled and shared for many purposes, including triggering stop announcements, and again, tracking and providing vehicle key performance indicators, such as our on-time performance, fleet maintenance statistics, and out-of-route events. It's also used by Genfair and Flamingo in our future in their payment validation process, and that's how you'll get a lot of that key real-time information. In addition, it's matched with the vehicle's GPS data, and then it is also, and that becomes the basis for the real-time predictions. That gets published and shared with the Transit app, which is the agency's with the agency's trip planner, and also with Textmarks, which supplies our real-time bus arrival messaging. Next is Genfair. Genfair actually this is not for the hardware Genfair that collects the fare boxes on the bus. This is for the software applications that track and monitor the onboard transactions, and then the summaries that are extracted at the Revenue Management Center at the end of the bus's route. And last is, again, Textmarks, as we said, and that's how we provide real-time messaging to riders that provides the bus arrival predictions actually at their stops. And then finally, we have SHI International. That provides the enterprise agreements for all of our licensing, all of our Microsoft licensing, and that includes Office 365, identity management, and the server environments for the PSTA. These licenses are all by subscription, and they currently support over 180 of our users and 60 virtual servers. Thanks to the guidance of Brad Miller, Al Burns, and my fellow team members, we collaborated and identified the priorities across our organization. And we looked at these partner solutions as they relate to our as they relate to our current strategies and future needs and goals. we asked ourselves if these providers were sized and scaled in accordance with the size of our agency, and the answer was yes. We reviewed their current business models and new business strategy for the purpose of determining if they can sustain their quality solution and adapt to the changes in technology at PSTA. The answer was yes.
So, Mr. Chair, Al Burns, Director of Procurement. I'd like to tip my hat off to Julie. Her and a key team member, Angelique Baker, member of my staff, have gone through and thoroughly reviewed majority, all of the IT contracts. As it relates to these 5 here, once it was decided that we were going to keep them, we came up with a strategy to try to make them coterminous, where all the contracts terminate at the same time to make it easier to manage the contracts. And after that was determined, then we looked at cost savings potential by some of these you haven't seen before. They were small enough value where each year they would be like $30,000 or $40,000. By reaching into long-term agreements, no more than 5 years, what we were able to establish were economies of scale and, like I said previously, make them coterminous. In your packets, you have a matrix, and I'd like to just briefly go over that. We Avail Technologies. Now, that's a 5-year contract, and by entering into that long-term agreement, we were able to garner savings of over $6,000. Clever Devices, as Julie said, is our backbone and contains a large majority of our infrastructure. Since we're changing things and Julie's still getting settled in, Clever Devices did not want to, and we agreed that it wasn't in our best interest to enter into a long-term agreement at this time. SPX GenFair, we've entered into a 3-year agreement, and we were able to garner a savings of $42,000. SHI, once again, that's a 3-year agreement, and we were able to save over $36,000. And Texmarks, we didn't get any hard savings, but what we were able to do was lock in our pricing over the course for the next 3 years. The fiscal impact of this is to be funded by PSTA operating funds. And once again, recommend approval for a 5-year contract with Avail Technologies in the amount of $195,500, a 1-year contract with Clever Devices in the amount of $304,700, and a 1-year contract with 2 1-year options for the following vendors: SBX Genfair in the amount of $113,500, SHI International Incorporated in an amount of $250,200, and Texmarks in the amount of $135,000, and recommend approval to authorize the CEO to exercise the renewal options. Just to kind of toot our horn, the savings cumulative that we've garnered was over $85,000 worth of savings. So.
I'm marking it down for
Okay, I'll just keep on looking at my boss. With that, we'll be more than happy to field any questions.
Okay. Question? Mr. Schulman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
He's my numbers guy.
Yeah, so obviously the numbers that are over 5 years, it's that number in total divided by 5 years, 3 years, whatnot. So the question with the Clever Devices, that supports the HASTIS software, and what was and that's an annual contract. What was the contract for the current year? Haven't we been?
I think it was $296,000 in total.
Okay, so
somewhere around that.
So it's very similar to the.
It's very similar, and that contract includes all the software maintenance for, everything, the bus time, all the uploading, the interface with HASTIS, and it also includes the quality assurance for the 3 bids that occurred during the year, and then on-site engineering, possibly 4 times a year when we run into issues that just can't get corrected via, remote support.
Okay. So my concern there was if we had just added, I believe, we added some modules within HASTIS recently. We had
Yes, sir.
an item that came through here, and there wasn't any ongoing support needed for that part. So I just wanted to make sure that this is virtually similar to what we've been doing anyway, and it seems like it is.
Yes.
Any other questions? Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, just, so your goal of trying to make them coterminous didn't, I mean, it obviously didn't work, but I appreciate the effort, because that was really one of my first questions. It would seem like it would make it a lot easier if they were coterminous. And to the Clever Devices only being a one-year deal, why is that in our best interest to only do 1 year? It would seem to me that a longer contract would yield lower annual costs, so just your...
Right now, and Julie could speak to it from a technical perspective, but at the end of the day, Clever wasn't willing to enter into a multi-year agreement at this time. And Julie, if you could explain from a technical perspective. Why
And
not?
before you do that real quick, and add to this, if you will. So is there somebody else out there that can do this service?
There are other providers that are out there, but it would be a momentous effort in order to change our whole infrastructure, and I'm not sure if that would be cost advantageous for us to do that.
Well, sometimes momentous threats make people do things differently, so I think that's something we need to look at, but go ahead, I'm sorry to interrupt.
And I can speak to all of that, because I actually visited Aptitech and Aptitransform to actually look at the competing vendors and speak to all of them and get to know them, to understand how their solutions would benefit PSTA, probably not in the short term, but in the long term.
Competitors of Clever.
Competitors
Okay,
of Clever
thank you.
that are stable in the industry,
Right.
because currently in the industry, because of the Internet of Things and the whole technological revolution, you do have a lot of startups. And that's why it was very important for us and Al and everybody here is planning everybody to come together and discuss the long-term viability of these vendors, because of the fact these are all at the core of our business. So if something happens, we have a problem. There's one particular new vendor that can compete with Clever, but they do not have, I think they only have one client in the States, and that kind of skewed us. And part of our strategy was to only take this 1 year with Clever, because our equipment on the buses is all aged out, as I'm sure you've heard. The Ivan 3, which is 10 years old, and lasted 10 years, which is, yay, Clever, and has supported our solution and grown and interfaced with HASTUS and all of these current applications that I spoke about, is the reason it's difficult to change. But we did not want to negotiate long-term with them either, because when we go to look at changing this infrastructure, if for some reason it does become possible and there is a better solution for you, we're going to enact it, and it's going to happen. But there's a lot of cost additionally involved, and at this time, we felt it's not a good idea to change our technology because we want to really stabilize our budget. So we thought that we would look at what we have, analyze our partners, make sure they can accommodate the things that we need in the changes.
So we are looking.
We always are looking,
Okay.
yes.
No, I think if I were them, I would like a 1 year deal too, and knowing our dependence on them, that makes me uncomfortable. So as you continue to explore realistic competitors, because you said there's many that you're not comfortable with, they could be here today, gone tomorrow. So you want to make some stability.
And one key reason why they are not anxious and we are not anxious to go beyond the 1 year is literally in this 1 year, we will either upgrade your entire solution or you will have a new solution. And the contract that we're negotiating now would not cover anything in a new solution, and it would be completely revised. And we have spoken to Clever as we are their fourth implementation in the States. So we've spoken to them and said, when this whole new implementation occurs, we would like to look at these contracts and see benefits, financial benefits over time. Right now, it's a little more costly for them because of the fact that we have antiquated software and limited processing ability on board the vehicles.
There's an issue that's coming down the pike, although I just heard maybe there's some delays in going to 5G, and at least what the equipment, the 10-year-old equipment we have on our buses now, it's working fine. 4G, 3G won't work. When the world goes to 5G, we'll have all this obsolete equipment. So Clever's given us a pitch on their solution, but it's a big ticket decision. So that's why Julie is looking at all these other options.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? I'd like to just say to both of you, thank you for doing what you can to streamline this process. It's very complicated, and none of us are experts in all these different systems and so on. So bringing this all together is very helpful. And I concur strongly with what Commissioner Eggers says, that we need to be on our toes at all times, because at any time we may lose one of these vendors and have a huge increase in pricing from a different vendor. And, we're not in a position to handle that kind of thing. So we want to make sure that at all times we're in touch with what the alternatives are and alternative ways to handle all the different needs that we have to service our customers. Okay, do I hear a motion?
I'll recommend that we approve the information technology maintenance agreements.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Schulman, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask that the other reports that we have move along so I don't continually run into Commissioner Gerard's time. We're always over time, it seems. We'll try and zip along with our other presentations that we have here.
Good morning, Commissioners. I speak fast, so this is okay. Julie Lupus, Director of Accounting. With this being the final set of financials for fiscal year 19, I'd like to turn directly to the year-to-date page, because that's where the story really is. We can return to the month-to-date with any questions you might have after. Although we budgeted for a $1.7 million deficit, we finished fiscal year 19 with a $312,000 surplus. This shows the dedication and hard work of staff to overcome and exceed expectations with the $2 million positive variance. Another important note is that while these financials are drafts, they are truly a performance report on the authority. There are only a handful of non-cash entries left to enter, such as the pension and actuarial items. So what you see here is a reflection of all the hard work everyone has done to contain costs. On the revenue side, passenger fares are up for the year. And in the expense category, while salaries and purchase transportation trolleys are both over budget due to reasons that we discuss monthly, all other accounts are well under. And again, this is showing the hard work of staff and the ability of everyone here to pull together for a common goal. Does anyone have any specific questions?
Questions?
Good job.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm surprised Commissioner Schulman doesn't have it. All right, just all I can say, folks, is keep us up to speed on this. We appreciate your efforts, and we'll revisit this on a regular basis. And quarterly reports, David?
We have a variety of quarterly reports in here, starting with the capital report, which goes on for a long number of pages.
Wow.
But,
Yikes.
but each of the projects, for anyone who has a specific interest in the project, is in there that you can take a look at. Our actual expenditures for the year were 23 million as compared to a budget of 51 million. The biggest driver is the timing of the BRT. We had thought initially when we put the budget together, we might have the funding already from FTA, and we know that's coming hopefully shortly. But that is probably the biggest driver on there for the changes in here. One of the other reports that we have in there is the fuel report. And I'm happy to say that over the course of the year, which Julie has brought up each month, is we've been under budget in fuel, primarily for two reasons. We've locked in fuel last year and again this year at about 2/3 of the amount of the fuel that we use. And our average price per gallon was $2 and I'll round up 24 cents compared to $2.30 last year. So we have savings on the cost side. We've also seen an increase in the miles per gallon based on the work that Henry and his team does in maintenance to make sure that the fleet is operating at peak efficiency. And I'll let Michael talk about the investment and reserve report before I go into health insurance.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. So in your packets, we have a quarterly investment report as well as a year-end investment report. At year-end, September 30th, we had approximately $47.1 million invested throughout a variety of financial institutions, and money market accounts and certificates of deposit. This compares pretty equally to September 30th, 2018, where we had $47.7 million invested. Also in your packets, there's a year-end reserve report that breaks down that $47.1 million. Just of the $13.5 million in the 2-month operating reserve, the $4 million in the self-insurance reserve, and $24 million in capital reserves. After we finish our fiscal year 19 audit, those reserve balances will be adjusted in the next reserve report once the audit is completed.
Okay. Well, on to health insurance update. We ended the year with 580 people enrolled in our 3 programs that we offer. We offer a buy-up plan, the high deductible plan, and our base plan. And that's up from 544 employees that we had at the beginning of the fiscal year. One of the things to note is in our base plan, that still is our highest participants. We have, out of those participants, it's about 58% are in there, about 336 employees. What's interesting when I was looking at this is 58% of our claims costs are also related to that. So it's a 1-for-1 match approximately. So that's basically telling me that this plan is made up primarily of those people who moderately use the plan. The buy-up plan, which is the most expensive plan, has decreased in the number of participants that are in there. And we've also seen the costs increase there. And it's telling me that the people who are in that plan are more higher risk employees or people who use our services more often. I was really pleased to see that the people that are in the high deductible plan have increased significantly. It's gone up and it's outperformed the buy-up plan now since last February. We now have 135 people in the plan at the end of the year. And the enrollment in that is about 21% of our people, but only represents about 6% of our costs. And when I look at this, because we always talk about we're paying money to the insurance carriers, how does that compare to what our claims costs are? And our claims costs are a little bit lower premiums paid than the actual claims costs themselves. So right now, the insurance carrier is losing about $122,000. Sort of a break-even point would be if our loss ratio, which is currently at 77%, would be at about 75%. So, but we continually look at this. As you know, this will be coming up in about the next 6 months, where we take a look and say, do we want to stay with where we're at? Do we want to keep the 3 plans? Do we want to go self-insured? So this is all good data for us to take a look at. Are there any questions on the quarterlies?
Questions? Pardon me?
One question.
Yes.
Or at least I think one question. Is there an explanation as to why on the high deductible health plan, the cost per employee almost doubled
Yes.
from last year?
We have the employees who were in previously either the new base plan or the buy-up plan have migrated over to the high deductible plan. So there's a little bit more, number one, a higher enrollment, so higher utilization. Again, that for anyone who has utilized the plan on any of these, you'll see costs go up towards the end of the year because they've, in some cases, reached their deductible or out-of-pocket expenses. So the claims costs go up. But it's basically because we have more people. It's still our lowest cost plan, though.
Okay, so, but that's, is that, so the cost per employee represents our cost per employee, or is that?
It's the cost per claim.
Okay, so that's
So-
mixed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
And we'll shift now to performance and ridership.
I'll just note, if you look at the ridership statistics, you can see what we were talking about with the mobility program. You can see that in this, we only have 1 month of data here because we're in the first month of the fiscal year, but in the middle blue, total DART passenger trips, which that probably needs to be changed in that definition, but it is defined, that's care ride ridership, is down 13% for the 1 month, or about 4,600 people. But then the mobility programs are up 3,000 through 3,700, or let's see, about 3,300. So about a wash as far as overall ridership on our paratransit programs. Of course, we monitor it much carefully than that, but that's overall what we see happening. Is fewer trips on traditional paratransit, more trips on the mobility programs, lower cost per ride, so net positive for now. But as that program keeps growing and growing and growing, then we're gonna have to keep monitoring it.
Okay. All right, any other comments or questions, folks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At some, we were talking about the electric charging and our long-range plan. And I know at some point we had talked about where there was research being done on solar panels. Any word on how that's progressing, or can we get an update on that at some point in the future?
Yeah, I would love us to get an update on that.
Okay.
Cool. All right, Commissioner Gerard?
Yes, sir.
Your meeting can finally, for once, start on time.
I can ask 4 more questions.
No, that's all right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Chair.